Let's be honest, a lot of people find the German language pretty intimidating, right? But what if I told you that underneath its reputation for being super complex, there's actually a surprisingly logical system? Well, today, we're laying out the blueprint. We're going to show you that learning German isn't about memorizing a million chaotic rules, but about understanding a clear, structured design.
Yeah, German definitely has this reputation for being a bit of a beast, with its crazy long compound words and what feels like 1,000 grammar rules. If you've ever felt a little overwhelmed by it, trust me, you are not alone. But today, we're going to look at that challenge in a completely different way. Instead of a beast you have to tame, think of it more like a structure, something that we can build.
Any strong structure, any solid building, relies on a really good foundation. And for the German language, that foundation rests on 3 core pillars. It's not simple. If you can get a handle on these 3 areas, the sounds, the words, and the sentences, you'll have the framework you need to start building up your German skills, probably way faster than you ever thought possible.
So here's our game plan. This is the blueprint we're going to follow today. First up, pillar number 1, the sounds of the language. Then we'll move to pillar 2, which is all about how German words are structured. After that, we'll tackle pillar 3, the basic logic behind German sentences. And then, the fun part. We'll see how it all comes together in your very first German conversation.
Okay, so every building project starts with the smallest components, right? The bricks and the mortar. For German, that's the sounds. Before we can even think about building words or sentences, we've got to understand the individual letters and how they're pronounced. And I've got some really good news for you English speakers. You're starting from a place that is going to feel very, very familiar.
So get this, the German alphabet uses the exact same 26 letters as English. The only addition, just 4 special characters. That's it. 3 of them are called umlaut. That's the A, O, and U you see with the 2 little dots over them. All those dots do is signal a change in the vowel sound, usually making it a bit brighter. So for example, the A sounds kind of like the E in the word bed. And that 4th character, the EZ, it looks like a capital B, but it just represents a sharp S sound. Seriously, you've already got almost the entire alphabet down pat.
So the real trick here isn't learning a bunch of new letters, it's just swapping the sounds for a few that you already know. For instance, the German W gets the English V sound, so the word for water, Wasser, sounds more like Wasser. The V often gets the F sound, which makes the word for father, Vater, sound like Vater. And here's a fun one. The German Z has this sharp ts sound, so Zeit, the word for time, is pronounced Zeit. And finally, the J sounds just like the English Y, so the word for yes, ja, is simply ja. If you can master these 4 simple swaps, you are giving yourself a massive head start.
All right, we've got the sounds down, so now we can start forming words. Now, when it comes to German nouns, words for people, places, and things, the single most important thing to understand is that every single one has a gender. For English speakers, this is usually the biggest hurdle, but stick with me because it's a lot more systematic than it looks at first.
Think about it. In English, we just have one word for the. It's easy. The car, the house, the idea, it's always just the. But in German, the word for the actually changes depending on the noun's gender. Every noun gets sorted into one of 3 boxes, masculine, feminine, or neuter, and you have to use the article, the word, that matches that gender.
Okay, let's break it down. For masculine nouns, the article is der, so the father becomes der Vater. For feminine nouns, it's die, which makes the mother die Mutter. And for neuter nouns, it's das, so the book is das Buch. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. The gender doesn't always make logical sense. For example, the word for girl, das Mädchen, is actually neuter. Kind of weird, right? This is why it's so important to learn the gender and its article together with the noun. Think of them as a package deal. Der, die, or das is part of the word itself.
Okay, time for our 3rd and final pillar. We're going to take those gendered words we just talked about and arrange them into sentences. And hey, if that whole noun gender thing felt a little strange, you're going to love this part. The basic sentence structure in German is going to feel incredibly familiar. We're really putting the pieces together now.
And this is such a huge relief for English speakers. For a simple statement, the word order is exactly what you're already used to. You start with the subject, then the verb, then the object. So in English, we say, I am reading a book. I is the subject, am reading is the verb, and a book is the object. Well, guess what? German follows that same fundamental logic.
Okay, let's actually build a sentence together, right now. I learn German. We start with our subject, ich, which means I. Simple enough. Then comes the verb.
Now, in German, verbs have to change their endings to match the subject. That's called conjugation. So the base verb lernen becomes lerne when you pair it with ich. The key rule to remember for now is that the verb always sits in the second position in a simple statement. And finally, we just add our object, Deutsch. Put it all together and you get Ich lerne Deutsch. Subject, verb, object. See? It's logical.
So we've laid the foundation. We've established our 3 pillars, the sounds, the words with their genders, and that basic sentence structure. We have our blueprint. Now let's see how all these foundational elements click together in a real practical conversation. It's time to build your very first one.
Let's break this down using our blueprint. In Guten Morgen, you can actually hear those vowel sounds we talked about in Pillar 1. The question, "Wie geht's?" follows a simple sentence structure, just like we saw in Pillar 3, with the verb right there in that second position. And the answers? They're simple, direct vocabulary, exactly the kind of words you'd learn as part of Pillar 2. This conversation isn't about complex grammar, it's just combining those fundamental building blocks. It just goes to show you, with a basic grasp of the pillars, you can start communicating immediately.
And, as the source for this explainer, German language coach MTAZ, points out, what we've just covered is really the essential starting point. It's the first few steps of a much bigger journey. The goal isn't to learn every single rule all at once, but to have a map. And now you have the core blueprint for understanding how German is actually constructed.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. German is not some impenetrable fortress of grammar. It's a system. It's built on logical pillars of sounds, words, and sentence structure. And once you grasp this blueprint, you can stop just memorizing random rules and actually start understanding how the language is built. And that really leaves us with just one final question. Now that you have the blueprint, what's the first thing you're going to build?